The rain in Seoul didn't wash things clean. It just made the neon lights bleed into the asphalt like fresh bruises. Inside the VVIP wing of Hansung University Hospital, the air was different. It didn't smell like rain. It didn't even smell like sickness. It smelled like money. And tonight, it smelled like betrayal. Zara adjusted the collar of her gray housekeeping uniform. She was invisible. That was the first rule she had learned since arriving in Korea 2 years ago. If you scrub the floor hard enough, if you keep your eyes on the tiles, people stop seeing you as a person. You become furniture. You become a ghost. She squeezed the mop handle, her knuckles aching. It was 2 a.m. The corridor was silent, except for the rhythmic beeping coming from room 404. Room 404 was supposed to be the safest room in the city. It was guarded by 3 men in black suits who looked like they were carved out of granite. They weren't hospital security. They were Young-un, the Black-Silver Syndicate. And the man dying inside that room was their king. The double doors burst open. The silence shattered. "Clear the hall! Move!" a doctor shouted, his white coat flapping as he ran alongside a gurney. Zara stepped back, pressing herself against the cold wall. She watched the blur of motion. The man on the gurney was young, perhaps early 30s, but his face was an ashen gray. Even unconscious, he was terrifying. He was Kang Min-ho, the dragon of Seoul, the man who owned half the skyscrapers in Gangnam. But right now, he looked like a broken doll. His silk shirt was torn open, revealing a chest that wasn't rising. The guards shoved Zara aside without even looking at her. They wheeled him into the trauma room. The heavy doors swung shut, but the lock didn't click. Zara shouldn't have looked. She should have taken her bucket and walked away. That's what a smart person would do. That's what someone who wanted to stay alive would do. But as the doors swung, a scent drifted out into the hallway. It was a neurotoxin derived from a rare flower. It didn't kill the heart. It froze the nerves that told the heart to beat. It wasn't the metallic tang of blood. It was sweet, sickeningly sweet, like crushed almonds and rotting cherries. Zara froze. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She knew that smell. She hadn't smelled it since she was a little girl in her grandmother's hut in the village, deep in the forests of Nigeria. The widow's tear. It was a neurotoxin derived from a rare flower. It didn't kill the heart. It froze the nerves that told the heart to beat. It was an assassination tool, clean and untraceable. And she knew something else. The antidote wasn't in any of the medicine cabinets inside that room. Against her better judgment, Zara abandoned her mop. She moved silently toward the door, peering through the crack between the hinges. Inside, the chaos was fake. That was the first thing she noticed. There were 3 doctors surrounding Min-ho, but their movements were wrong. They were performing CPR, but their compressions were shallow, weak. They weren't trying to pump blood, they were pantomiming it. One of the doctors, a man with thinning hair and sweat on his upper lip, glanced at the clock on the wall. He wasn't looking at the patient, he was waiting for the time to pass. "Charging to 200, the nurse announced, but Zara saw her finger hover over the button. She didn't press it. The monitor let out a long, high-pitched whine. Beep! The flatline. The doctor let out a breath that sounded like relief. He stepped back, pulling off his gloves. Time of death, 2:44 a.m. Cause, massive cardiac arrest. The guards inside the room didn't cry out. They didn't look devastated. The tall one, the one with a scar running through his eyebrow, pulled out his phone. He didn't call for help. He typed a text message. A single word. Done. They had killed him. It wasn't a heart attack. It was a coup. They had brought him here to die, surrounded by doctors paid to let him slip away. Zara felt a cold rage rise in her chest. She remembered her grandmother's voice. To have the power to heal and do nothing is a sin against the ancestors. She touched the small leather pouch hanging around her neck, hidden beneath her uniform. It was her lifeline. Inside was a dried, gnarly root, a rogbo, the bitter cola, mixed with the bark of the fire tree. She chewed it on double shifts to keep awake. It was a stimulant so powerful it can make a tired heart race like a stallion. If the poison froze the nerves, the root would set them on fire. The doctor reached for the white sheet to pull it over Min-ho's face. "Bag him. Get him to the incinerator immediately. No autopsy, family orders." Incinerator. They were going to burn the evidence before the sun came up. Zara didn't think. She didn't plan. She just moved. She pushed the door open and stepped into the room. "Stop!" she commanded. The voice didn't sound like hers. It was deeper, filled with an authority a cleaning lady shouldn't have. The room froze. The doctors turned. The guards reached for their jackets, where their guns were holstered. "Who the hell are you?" the scarred guard barked. "Get out!" "He is not dead," Zara said, walking steadily toward the body. "And if you zip that bag, you are murderers." "Get this trash out of here," the doctor sneered, his eyes darting nervously to the guards. The scarred guard lunged for her, grabbing her arm. "You didn't see anything made. Go back to your bucket." Zara twisted. She wasn't a fighter, but she was desperate. She stomped on the guard's instep with her heavy work boots and shoved him back. Before he could recover, she reached into her shirt and ripped the leather pouch from her neck. "Lock the door!" she screamed, though she knew no one would listen. She reached the gurney. Minho looked peaceful, almost like a statue carved from marble, but Zara saw the tiny purple tint on his earlobes. The poison was settling. She had seconds. She tore the pouch open with her teeth. She grabbed the chunk of dried root and shoved it into her mouth, biting down hard. The taste exploded in her mouth, acrid, bitter, spicy, earthy. It tasted like soil and lightning. Her eyes watered instantly. The juices flowed, mixing with her saliva to create a thick, potent paste. "Shoot her!" the doctor screamed. The guard raised his pistol. Zara didn't flinch. She grabbed Minho's jaw, forcing his mouth open. She took a deep breath, filling her lungs, and lowered her face to his. She didn't kiss him gently. She pressed her mouth over his, forming a seal, and exhaled violently. She used her tongue to push the bitter paste past his lips, forcing it under his tongue, right where the blood vessels were closest to the surface. "Wake up!" she prayed. "Breath of the ancestor! Wake him up!" She pulled back, gasping. The bitter taste burned her throat. For a second, there was nothing, just the silence of the room and the hum of the ventilation. The guard with the gun laughed, a cruel, dry sound. "Crazy bitch, you think voodoo works on the dead?" He cocked the hammer of the gun. "Now we have 2 bodies to burn." The doctor stepped forward to check the monitor, reaching to turn it off. Thump. The sound was faint, like a drum beaten underwater. The doctor froze. Thump, thump. The line on the monitor jumped, a jagged, violent spike of green light. Minho's body arched off the table. It wasn't a gentle waking. It was a resurrection by fire. The roots had hit his bloodstream like a shot of pure adrenaline. His eyes snapped open. They weren't the eyes of a human. They were bloodshot, dilated, wild. He let out a gasp that sounded like tearing metal. "He's alive!" the nurse shrieked, dropping the tray of instruments. Clatter and steel rang through the room. Minho didn't see the doctors. He didn't see the guards. He was blind with the heat of the antidote. He reached out blindly, his hand closing around the first thing he touched. Zara's throat. His grip was iron. He pulled her down, his fingers digging into her windpipe. He was suffocating, burning, and his instinct was to kill whatever was near. "Shoot him! Finish it!" the scarred guard yelled, aiming the gun at the boss he was supposed to protect. Zara couldn't breathe. Black spots danced in her vision, but she didn't struggle against Minho. She grabbed his wrist with both hands, anchoring herself. She looked into his wild, terrifying eyes. "Oga, breathe," she choked out, the Nigerian pigeon slipping out in her desperation. "I gave you fire. Don't let it burn you." Minho blinked. The fog of death cleared for a split second. He saw her. He saw the woman in the gray uniform, tears streaming down her face, smelling of bleach and bitter roots. He saw the guard behind her, leveling the gun at her head. The dragon woke up. Minho didn't let go of Zara. He used her as an anchor to pull himself up. With his other hand, he grabbed the scalpel from the tray the nurse had dropped. The movement was a blur. The guard fired. Bang! The bullet shattered the IV pole next to Zara's head. Minho threw the scalpel. It flew across the room, embedding itself deep into the guard's shoulder. The gun clattered to the floor. Minho collapsed back onto the pillows, his chest heaving and sweat pouring down his face as the poison and the antidote warred in his veins. He was alive, but he was paralyzed again, his energy spent in that one strike. The room fell into a terrified silence. The remaining guards looked at each other. They knew they had failed. They knew if he lived until morning, they were all dead men. Zara coughed, rubbing her bruised throat. She looked at the door. She looked at the window. They were trapped. She looked down at Minho. He was watching her. He couldn't speak, but his eyes were screaming, "Get me out." Zara grabbed the handle of the heavy metal gurney. She looked at the corrupt doctor who was trembling in the corner. "Open the door," Zara said, her voice shaking but hard, "or I will tell him exactly which button you didn't press." She kicked the brake of the gurney, unlocking the wheels. The night was far from over. In fact, the nightmare had just begun. But the dragon wasn't dead, and the maid who woke him up wasn't invisible anymore. The wheels of the gurney squealed against the linoleum floor, a sound that seemed loud enough to wake the dead, or in this case, alert the killers. Zara didn't run. Running attracted attention. She walked with a terrifying purpose, pushing the heavy metal bed toward the service elevators. Minho was conscious, but barely. The fire from the root was fading, replaced by the shivering cold of the poison fighting back. His teeth chattered, a sound that rattled Zara's bones. "Quiet," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We are almost there." They reached the elevator bank just as the alarms began to ring. Code blue. Room 404. The PA system blared. The corrupt doctor had found his courage. Zara cursed under her breath. The elevator doors were too slow. She looked at the service chute, the laundry disposal. It was a metal slide that led down to the basement laundry processing unit. It was dangerous, dirty, and their only chance. She grabbed Minho by the lapels of his ruined silk shirt. "Olga, you have to trust me, or you die here." Minho looked at her with glazed, feverish eyes. He didn't argue. He couldn't. With a grunt of effort that strained every muscle in her back, she hauled the Dragon of Soul off the gurney and shoved him into the large canvas laundry cart sitting by the chute. He groaned as he landed on a pile of soiled bedsheets. Zara jumped in after him, pulling the canvas cover over their heads just as the elevator doors dinged open and heavy boots pounded down the hallway. She kicked the release pedal. They plummeted. It was a dark, terrifying slide, smelling of bleach and sickness. They landed with a crash in a pile of linens in the basement. The air down here was thick with steam and the hum of massive industrial washing machines. It was loud, perfect cover. Zara scrambled out of the cart, coughing in the humid air. She dragged Minho out. He was dead weight now. The initial adrenaline of the Orogbo had worn off, leaving him paralyzed again, but he was breathing. She couldn't take him to the street. The hospital perimeter would be locked down. She needed a place where no one looked, a place that was warm. She dragged him through the maze of pipes until she found the heavy iron door, marked Authorized Personnel Only, Boiler Room and Arboretum Access. This was her sanctuary. During her double shifts, when her legs ached and she missed the heat of Lagos, she would come here. The hospital kept a small greenhouse on the roof above the boiler room for therapeutic plants, but the heat vented up from here. She laid Minho on the concrete floor near the massive furnace. It was sweltering, but he was shivering as if he were lying in snow. His lips were turning blue again. "No," she hissed. "You don't get to die on me now. I already lost my job for you." She needed water. She found a rusty tin mug on a workbench and filled it from a utility sink. She reached into her pocket. She had 2 pieces of the root left. It wasn't enough to chew. She needed to extract the oil. She needed a tea. Using a lighter from her pocket and the heat of the furnace, she warmed the water in the tin until it steamed. She crumbled the remaining root into the water, watching the liquid turn a murky reddish brown. The smell filled the small room, pungent, earthy, and sharp. It cut through the smell of industrial soap. She knelt beside him. She lifted his head into her lap. His skin was burning, yet clammy. "Drink," she commanded softly. Minho's eyes fluttered open. He looked at the tin cup, then at her. "Poison?" he rasped, his voice sounding like broken glass. "If I wanted to kill you, I would have left you upstairs with your friends. Drink. It is agbo. It tastes like the earth. It will ground you." He drank. He choked on the bitterness, coughing, but he swallowed it down. For an hour, time seemed to suspend in the boiler room. Zara wiped the sweat from his forehead with the sleeve of her uniform. She hummed a low, rhythmic song, a Yoruba lullaby her grandmother used to sing when the fever came. Slowly, the shivering stopped. The blue tint faded from his lips, replaced by a flush of life. Minho tried to sit up. This time, he didn't fall back. He leaned against the brick wall, breathing heavily, watching her. His vision had cleared. He really saw her now. He saw the fraying hem of her gray uniform, the way her braided hair was pulled back efficiently, the strength in her hands. "You're the cleaner," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a realization. "I am Zara," she corrected him, staring right back. She didn't look down. "And you are the man who owes me a new uniform." Minho let out a sound that might have been a laugh or a groan of pain. He looked at his hands, flexing his fingers. The paralysis was gone. "What did you give me?" "The doctors. They said the widow's tear has no cure." "Your doctors read books written by men who have never stepped foot in a forest. The root stimulates the nervous system faster than the poison can shut it down. It's a war inside your blood, and the root won." Minho stared at her, a strange expression crossing his face. In his world, people killed for money and power. No one saved a stranger for free. "Why?" he asked. "You could have walked away." Zara paused. She looked at the fire in the furnace. "Because I am a healer," she said softly. "Even if this country only sees me as a maid, my hands are made to fix things, not to throw them away." Minho closed his eyes, leaning his head back. "They think I'm dead," he whispered. "My underboss, Brother June, he was the one who poured the wine." "Then let them think it," Zara said, staring right at his face. "Ghosts are dangerous. You can walk through walls." Minho opened his eyes. The fear was gone. The confusion was gone. The dragon was back, and his eyes were cold steel. "I need a phone." Zara handed him his. It was an old model, the screen cracked in a spiderwebbed pattern. He took it carefully, as if it were a fragile diamond. He didn't call his men. He dialed a number from memory. He put it on speaker. "Is it done?" a voice answered. It was slick, arrogant, Brother June. Minho didn't speak for a long moment. He let the silence stretch, heavy and suffocating. "Who is this?" June asked, his voice pitching up slightly. "The wine was excellent, Juna," Minho said, his voice calm, conversational, which made it terrifying. But it had a bitter aftertaste. There was a crash on the other end of the line, like a glass being dropped. "Minho? That's impossible. I saw the monitor." "You saw what I wanted you to see," Minho lied smoothly. He looked at Zara as he spoke. "And now I am coming to the celebration. Save me a drink." He hung up and crushed the phone in his hand, then realized what he had done. He looked at Zara apologetically. "I will buy you a new one. I will buy you the factory that makes them." He stood up. He was unsteady for a second, but Zara stepped in, offering her shoulder. He took it. He leaned on her not out of weakness, but out of trust. "Where are they?" Zara asked. Minho's adjusting his ruined jacket. "They are the Golden Tiger Club," Minho said. The rain had stopped by the time they reached the back alley of the Golden Tiger Club. They had stolen a delivery van from the hospital loading dock. Zara drove. Minho sat in the passenger seat, gathering his strength, letting the last of the root's energy flood his muscles. The club was thumping with bass. The neon sign buzzed overhead. "Stay in the car," Minho said, checking the magazine of the gun he had taken from the hospital guard's unconscious body. "No," Zara said. She turned off the engine. "You are still shaking on your left side. You need someone to watch your back." Minho looked at her. He wanted to protect her, but he knew she was right. And more than that, he wanted her there. He wanted the woman who breathed life into him to see him take his life back. "Stay behind me," he ordered. "If shooting starts, get down." They walked to the back entrance. The bouncers saw Minho and turned pale. He didn't reach for his radio. He simply stepped aside, bowing so low his head almost touched the wet pavement. The king was dead, and yet here he walked. They moved through the kitchen, past startled cooks, and pushed through the double doors into the VIP lounge. The music was loud, but the atmosphere was tense. At the center table, surrounded by expensive champagne and laughing women, sat June. He was wearing Minho's favorite white suit. Minho didn't shout. He didn't run. He simply walked into the center of the room. He picked up a bottle of champagne from a passing waiter's tray and smashed it against the edge of a marble table. The sound cut through the music like a gunshot. The DJ stopped. The room went deathly silent. June stood up, his face draining of color. It's a trick. He's a ghost." Minho stepped forward, the broken glass bottle in his hand reflecting the disco lights. "I am not a ghost, brother. I am the consequences of your ambition." The guards around the room, men who had sworn loyalty to Minho just yesterday, hesitated. They looked from the terrified usurper to the resurrected king. "Kill him!" June screamed. "He is one man! Kill him!" Two guards raised their guns. Zara moved. She didn't have a gun. She had the heavy iron wrench hidden in her sleeve. She threw it with terrifying accuracy. It struck the nearest gunman in the wrist. He howled, dropping his weapon. The distraction was all Minho needed. He moved with the speed of the viper. He fired 2 shots, not to kill, but to disarm. The second guard fell. Minho crossed the room in 3 strides. He grabbed June by the throat and slammed him onto the marble table, shards of glass scattering like diamonds across the floor. June gasped, his face pressed against the wet surface, the jagged neck of the broken bottle dangerously close to his jugular. Minho didn't look at the traitor beneath him. He looked up at the circle of bodyguards who were standing frozen, their guns half raised, indecisive. "Look at him." Minho's voice was low, terrifyingly calm. It carried to the back of the silent room. "Look at the man you thought could replace me. He trembles like a child." He tightened his grip on June's neck. "Drop the guns, or I burn this city down with you inside it." The silence stretched for a heartbeat, 2, then clatter. One by one, the weapons hit the floor. The loyalty of a mercenary is bought, but the loyalty of a soldier is earned through fear, and Minho was the only thing they feared. Minho pulled June up by his hair, forcing him to look at the back of the room. "Look at her," Minho commanded, pointing a finger at Zara. She was standing by the kitchen doors, the heavy iron wrench still gripping her hand, her chest heaving. Her gray uniform was stained with grease and soot, her hair coming loose from her braids. She didn't look like a maid. Standing there in the strobe lights, she looked like a warrior carved from obsidian. "You asked how I survived," Minho whispered into June's ear. "You calculated the dosage for a man. You didn't calculate for her." "She's just the help," June sputtered. "No," Minho said, his eyes darkening. "She is the reason you failed." Minho didn't scream. He didn't make a speech. He simply signaled to his loyal lieutenant, the scarred guard from the hospital who had switched sides the moment he saw his boss rise from the dead. "Take him," Minho said, releasing June with a shove. "He likes poison. Put him in a cell and feed him nothing but almonds until he remembers the taste of betrayal." As they dragged the screaming traitor away, the adrenaline that had been holding Minho upright finally vanished. He swayed. Zara was there instantly. She dropped the wrench and caught him before he could fall. "I told you," she scolded gently, wrapping her arm around him to support him. "The root gives, but it takes back. You need to rest." Minho looked down at her. The club was secure. His kingdom was back in his hands. But he didn't care about the bowing guards or the terrified staff. He only saw the woman holding him up. "Take me home, Zara," he whispered, closing his eyes. "Take me home." 3 months later, the winter frost had melted from the windows of Seoul, replaced by the soft golden light of spring. Zara stood in the center of her tiny basement apartment in Itaewon. It was empty. The cardboard boxes were taped shut. She wasn't running away this time. She was moving on. She picked up the framed photo of her grandmother from the mantel. "We did it, Mama. We survived the winter." A knock echoed on the door. It wasn't the frantic pounding of a raid or the rude banging of a landlord. It was a solid, confident rhythm. 3 distinct knocks. She opened it. Minho stood there. He wasn't wearing the bloodied shirt or the torn jacket. He was wearing a charcoal 3-piece suit that cost more than her entire building. His hair was perfectly styled, his watch glinting in the sun. But his eyes were the same, intense, focused entirely on her. "The car is waiting," he said. "I can take a taxi to the airport, Minho," Zara teased, grabbing her bag. "I don't need the royal treatment." "You're not going to the airport," he replied, stepping aside to let her pass. Zara froze. "What? My visa is expired. If I don't leave..." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a thick envelope. He placed it in her hand. It wasn't a plane ticket. It was a deed. "I bought the board out this morning," Minho said casually, as if discussing the weather. "I fired the chief of surgery. The position of director of private care is vacant, and I know a woman who knows more about saving lives than any of them." Zara looked at the papers, her hands shaking. "Minho, I didn't even finish my degree. I'm a cleaner." "Then finish it," he said, walking her toward the black limousine waiting at the curb. The driver opened the door. Belt and Mortadendam, her Nisat Selaville. They drove through the city, the skyline of Seoul gleaming around them. But the car didn't stop at the hospital. It stopped at the base of the Lotte World Tower, the highest point in the city. "Why are we here?" Zara asked as the private elevator shot them upward. "Because," Minho said, looking straight ahead, "the basement is too cold for you." The elevator doors opened directly into the penthouse. Zara gasped. He hadn't just brought her to a home, he had brought her to a sanctuary. The entire south wall of the penthouse, overlooking the clouds, had been converted into a climate-controlled greenhouse. But it wasn't filled with the usual decorative Korean orchids. It was filled with dark, rich soil. Rows of green saplings were stretching towards the sun. Zara walked forward, her fingers brushing the leaves. She recognized them instantly. Lemongrass, bitter cola, and the fire tree. "I had them imported," Minho said, his voice soft, standing right behind her. "The botanist said they wouldn't grow in this climate. They said the air was too thin up here." He reached out and took her hand, interlacing his fingers with hers. His grip was warm, strong, and alive. "I told them they would grow," he whispered, lifting her hand to his lips, kissing the pulse point of her wrist, the exact spot where she had checked for his life that night in the morgue. Zara turned to him. The dragon of Seoul looked at her, not with the hunger of a predator, but with the devotion of a man who had found his breath. "You are a stubborn man, Minho," she smiled, tears pricking her eyes. "And you," he replied, leaning in until their foreheads touched, "are the cure." Outside, the city of Seoul bustled on, unaware that high above the clouds, the dragon and the healer had started their own empire, one built not on poison, but on life. And that is the story of how a single root and a brave heart saved the dragon of Seoul. If you enjoyed this story, please don't forget to hit the like button. It helps the channel so much. And tell me in the comments, do you think you could have saved Minho, or would you have run for the exit? Make sure you are subscribed and have the bell notification turned on so you don't miss our next story.